Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for attending this session on the future of energy storage. My name is Lucas Maurice. I'm a subject matter expert in energy at Hello Tomorrow, and today we really want to talk about what's ahead in the market for storage, batteries, but also alternative systems for energy storage. So we're going to discuss this with these three amazing panel, which I will let them introduce themselves quickly.
Hello, everyone. My name is Matthew Blaine. I work for Voyager. We're an early-stage climate venture capital fund, investing in climate technologies that we see as foundational to global decarbonization. We predominantly invest in seed and Series A, up to about $10 million in Europe and North America.
Hi, everyone. My name is Shirley Meng. I'm a professor from the University of Chicago. I also serve as the chief scientist for Argonne National Lab's Energy Storage Hub, one of the two biggest battery hub was located in Chicago. It's called the Energy Storage Research Alliance, and I'm the director of that alliance. It's a pleasure to be here.
Hello, everyone. My name is Marcin Kopot. I lead corporate development and investor relations at Energy Dome. It's an Italian scale-up in the long-duration energy storage technology company.
All right, thank you, guys. So let's start the discussion on what's ahead in the market. So batteries storage is a critical component of the future decarbonized grid, both to balance renewable production, but also to provide cost competitiveness when energy is a high demand and then high price. So my first question will go to Matthew. What's ahead in terms of global scaling? We have seen very big projects starting, such as, just to name a few, in Saudi Arabia, there is 12.5 gigawatt capacity project starting between BYD, the Chinese manufacturer, and the Saudi electric company. In Europe, we also have a few gigawatt projects, notably in the Netherlands, a 2.8 gigawatt one. So what's ahead? What's needed to make this grid storage go really global? What do we still need?
Yeah, so I think it's helpful to set the scene a little bit. In 2019, 9 gigawatt hours of utility-scale battery storage were deployed globally. And in 2024, over 200 gigawatt hours of utility-scale battery storage were deployed. So the acceleration in this space is phenomenal. And that's partly a result of decreasing cost and partly a result of increasing availability of infrastructure capital. And so to answer the question about what we need to take this further, I would say more of both. Continued cost reductions in terms of the core technologies, continued deployment of infrastructure finance particularly. A lot of these technologies have already been de-risked from a technical perspective, so it's more about infrastructure finance rather than venture capital to deploy them at scale. And then you have the additional considerations that I'm sure most people in this room are aware of around unblocking the interconnection issues that we see, the transmission issues, and cumulatively, those are the keys to really unlocking energy storage at the next level of scale.
Okay, and so what is the room here maybe from an innovation point of view? Is there any really new innovations needed, or is it more about unlocking, as you said, different stuff for the global scale?
It's an excellent question. So deploying infrastructure finance into existing technologies is an important part of it, but venture capital and innovation also has a very important role to play, specifically on reducing the cost side further. So 98% of the 200 gigawatt hours that were deployed last year was lithium-ion. Those are established chemistries, but there's more we can do in the manufacturing process. At Voyager, we invested in a company called SirenOpt that's essentially an improved sensor for battery manufacturers that significantly reduces wastage and as a result significantly reduces the cost. More technologies like that have the potential to deliver further cost reductions, particularly on the NFP side, but also on the NMC side. And then there's other innovations as well. So another company invested in Anther Energy have a novel electrolyte that allows for flexible form factors for lithium-ion batteries, which allows you to do more interesting things than just have a block of lithium-ion battery. You can build it into more innovative structures. It's also safer, reduces the fire risk, which means that you could potentially one day deploy it in urban environments. There's still plenty of roles for innovation and therefore venture capital to play in this space to facilitate that growth.
Okay, so a lot to do with manufacturing. So talking about the chemistries, you mentioned LFP, so lithium iron phosphate, or NMC, nickel, manganese, cobalt. These are the ones scaling. Shirley, from a scientific professor point of view, you're working on these topics for a long time. What are the next chemistries that are going to hit the market and that also have the potential to go very global with big projects? There's a lot of chemistries or candidates, but in your perspective, which ones are really the ones to look at for the moment?
So I will speak as the director for the Energy Storage Research Alliance. The number one chemistry on our list is sodium-ion batteries. Actually, this is a good place to talk about the sodium-ion batteries. Many of you don't know this is a French technology. Actually, in the 1960s, before the birth of lithium-ion batteries, sodium-ion battery chemistry have already been very well developed in France. Today, one of the French companies called TMAT, they actually produce sodium-ion batteries for power tools, and they're already being sold online. China is making good ways to scale and build the supply chains. America as well, in US. For full disclosure, my own startup called Unigrid will be starting selling sodium batteries this year. I want to emphasize that sodium-ion batteries will take advantage of the gigafactories infrastructure already in place, because this chemistry work on the same principles as the lithium-ion batteries. Therefore, when we are scaling this new chemistry, we can avoid all the critical chemicals that are currently dominated by China, and we could secure our own supply chains for the mass production of sodium-ion batteries. Of course, we need to work on the quality, the ability to achieve same energy density and the cycle life as lithium iron phosphate, and that is not an easy job. The second most exciting chemistry, many of you have heard a lot on the media, solid-state batteries. And what I'm referring to are not those semi-quasi solid-state, but the true solid-state batteries, where you will be parking your car in your home garage without worrying about safety incidents. More importantly, solid-state batteries offer us an opportunity for brand new factory design. So, of course, you can say it's a challenge because you cannot use the existing infrastructure. But I think we're very excited about the opportunities presented by solid state. You have safe, high energy density, and then because they're safe, fast charging is not a problem because you can just swap the batteries. Right. So I hope that presents some interesting opportunities.
Yeah, I just want to jump in there with the venture perspective on sodium ion, because I think it's a space that's had a huge amount of hype. And I just want to draw attention to what Shirley was saying about how it lends itself to being deployed on the existing gigafactory infrastructure that we have for lithium ion. And I do think that probably positions the large battery manufacturers in China, the existing battery manufacturers, to dominate sodium-ion production because they can leverage their own infrastructure. Whilst sodium-ion startups based in Europe and North America are trying to get to that gigafactory competence from scratch, and we've seen with Northvolt that that's no easy undertaking. So I do think there's a question there about whether that innovation, and it is innovation, is going to be venture-led or led by the established players in the space. The area that seems particularly exciting to improve the energy density of sodium ion, which is really important for making it cost superior to LFP on a $1 per kilowatt hour basis is anode-free sodium ion. And there, given the extent of the technical innovation that's required, that could be more of a venture play and therefore lend itself to Europe and North American companies. But I'd be interested, Shirley, if you have any thoughts on anode-free sodium ion.
Yeah, I think anode-free is the holy grail. Everyone was going after that, and it has a wide open space for the security of the IP. So this gave me a good segue to say important things regarding intellectual properties. Regardless what chemistry and what new battery technology we're going to succeed, in West, in Europe and North America, it is important to realize the rudimental issues in the battery technologies is the IP. I want to remind everyone, in 1997, when lithium-ion phosphate was invented, no patent was filed in China. And this time, I believe that IP will be a very important issue to be resolved before any new battery technologies are being introduced to the market.
Okay, great. Thank you for this insight. I'd like to come back on the manufacturing side. So you said sodium ion, you could just change the chemistry basically in the existing lines, but in solid state it's not possible. So we have to build new factories, or can we just retrofit some part of the existing ones? And yes.
No retrofit, I'm afraid. Yeah, and I want to remind everyone that I have given a few TED Talk online that really emphasize the world need a few hundred terawatt hour. Today, lithium battery production capacity is 1 terawatt hour. Lead acid is 1 terawatt hour. So question is how many factories we need to build. And if you are building a new factory, do you want to replicate what China has perfected, or do you want to build the factory of the future?
And in these new factories, is there any emerging players that are taking a lead, any region? Or do you see it's still at the early stage and everybody still has a game to play?
So I have had the privilege to see some very fascinating prototyping line in South Korea, in Japan. And I would say that it's a bit like 2016 when I visited the CATL, seeing their gigafactory for the first time. So I am cautiously optimistic that solid state could be scaled at a reasonable pace. The cost is still very high now, but many talented people around the world is working on that. So I hope those companies like Samsung, Panasonic, I think they're investing in the factory by Honda or spin out from Honda. Yeah, they hopefully they will be open for the public to view very soon.
Okay. Do you see so is it more led by established big corporates, or is it the game of startups?
I think we've seen quite a few innovations over the years in solid state, but I think the scale is particularly challenging. It's been one of those spaces a bit like, not to the same extent, but a bit like fusion that's been discussed for a long time. Yeah. And venture capital investors have heard a lot of companies pitching them on solid state. So we've seen it in both the geographies we operate in, both Europe and North America. We've seen some exciting technologies we haven't invested to date. I think the most tangible announcements in terms of deploying at real scale are coming out of the South Korean companies that Shirley just alluded to. So similar to the sodium ion space, again, I think there is a question about whether, given the challenges of getting to gigafactory scale from a startup, there is a question there in terms of the role of venture capital in driving that. I think if we saw an unbelievable solid-state battery company which had a clear pathway to scale, we'd jump on it. But that pathway to scale is very challenging, and the financing environment for that kind of capital-intensive play is tight, and Northvolt is quite a good example. I'm not saying we shouldn't do it. I think Just because Northvolt didn't get to where it wanted to, that doesn't mean we should avoid those kind of capital-intensive pathways for all time. It just means it has to look really compelling.
Yeah.
Sure.
I have a map, international map. The West, all startups. The East, all tier 1 large companies. So I think it's because in the East, that's my own interpretation, in the East, government have considered the batteries as the national strategies. In the West, we're still debating. So for me, I think that's the very important, critical matter for all of us to figure it out, because which model works better.
Yeah, I'll just like to remind everyone that you probably have a lot of questions about these topics. You could scan the QR code that should appear quickly and just send our questions. I'll see we already have one. So we'll dedicate some time at the end for these questions. Thank you very much. So yeah, thank you. Very good insights on the manufacturing side. But there's still a lot of challenges on the R&D, right? And to be solved. There are different players in the space. I'd like to just maybe take a side step on this discussion, because there is a lot of things happening right now in the world, especially in the West, about research. Just a quick question for you, Shirley. You mentioned different stuff about Battery Alliance or Energy Storage Alliance. What is the new perspective of the US administration regarding research? Is there an impact on this kind of technologies? Because on some space it's climate tech, so maybe a bit away from the current administration, but also it's a big business case. So do you see a strong impact of how the US seems to be going, direction is going, or do you see it, what's your perspective on it?
Okay. How many of the audience are from the United States? Okay. I just want to make sure I'm not saying something that will travel back all the way there. Okay, so first of all, I would like to emphasize battery is an important part of technologies for the so-called energy dominance. I think if you read very carefully the government priorities in terms of the energy technologies, it's actually going for dominance. So batteries are powering, actually chips are not powering our computers. Batteries are powering, chips are the brains, but the batteries are powering the chips. So it's very important to realize battery technology is closely related to national security. For this reason, I believe that the battery research or battery technology development will consider to be priorities in this new administration. Now, you must have read something about forbidden words. There are certain things we cannot mention, even climate change, decarbonizations. However, I think it's important to realize battery technology itself were not renewables. Anybody who consider batteries renewables, you need to go back to the basics. We rely on mining, we rely on green, responsible mining, and we rely on green manufacturing, innovative manufacturing methods in order to lower the carbon footprint of battery technologies. So I think that my perspective is that even though certain aspect of the battery research money will be impacted. However, if we stay on the track about competitiveness in terms of the vehicle technology and the resilience of the grids, and then probably we will have to talk about the defense technologies. I think the core parts of the battery research will be preserved in the United States. So we'll be happy to hear other opinions.
Yeah, I'm a lot more bullish, and I'd also love to hear, Martin, what you think. So last year, Texas deployed more utility-scale battery storage than California. And I can assure you that that's not because Texans care deeply about climate change. It is because of superior unit economics. And something that we've seen in the climate tech space for the 30 years that the climate tech space has been around, since Rio in about 1992, is that technologies with a green premium can get to 2, 3, 4, 5% adoption at a stretch from the small segment that are willing to pay more for something that's sustainable. But you only achieve global adoption and widespread adoption through superior unit economics. And batteries are now at the stage where they are being deployed because you can make money out of them, not because you care about sustainability. And I would actually stretch that across all or most renewable technologies. In 2023, 85% of new energy generation infrastructure deployed globally, 85% was wind and solar. That's a global number. And again, outside of particularly the European market, the vast majority of that is not out of concern for climate change. In China, they're deploying 230 gigawatts a year. I think we operate in both the US and Europe. Before Trump, we were looking for the technologies that have a pathway to superior unit economics. During Trump, we're looking for technologies that have a pathway to superior unit economics. One election in one country doesn't really change that. Grant financing can be very helpful. It can be a fantastic accelerant. It can be a fantastic tailwind. It can accelerate the cost reduction down the cost curve, but it's not a prerequisite. And the nature of our space is you get waves of innovation, where innovation in one space unlocks the unit economics in another space. And business models that were previously uncompetitive and unviable become viable through cost reductions in other spaces. And again, public policy can accelerate that process, but it's not required. So our job is to continue to stay at the forefront of research and innovation and find those opportunities that are now viable that previously weren't.
Sure, okay. Thank you for this very interesting reminders and views. So we have mainly talked about electrochemical batteries for now, but storage is much larger than that. There are discussions about storing energy through hydrogen, compressed gas, and others. And that's now I want to talk about this with Marcin. So Marcin, you work at Energy Dome. It's a scaling company from Italy. Could you give a bit of insight about your tech, what you do, and what's the added value compared to, let's call them, traditional batteries?
I'm glad that we're moving away from electrochemical batteries and moving towards alternatives. So we at Energy Dome developed a proprietary technology that is called the CO2 battery. It's a long-duration energy storage solution at utility grid scale. And by long duration, we mean 8 hour plus. This is where the market is moving towards now. Our proposition is slightly different. So our technology is made up of the existing components that have been on the market for a long time with applications in other sectors. In that case, we effectively designed a plant that uses those components and put them together in a system, a closed-loop system that uses CO2 as a medium that gets compressed and decompressed, and this way stores stores energy for a long time. We are, in terms of the technology readiness, we've actually de-risked our technology, so we are commercial at this point. Our technology has been designed with the standardization in mind. So effectively, we are able to deploy our technology globally, regardless and independent of any kind of ambient temperature or any other conditions. What makes our technology stand out is that, first of all, we are commercially available now, so we can deploy our system. Techno-economic performance of our batteries is very compelling. You were speaking about the green premium. Our customers are actually not interested in paying green premium. So for mass deployment, what's very important is to actually have a very compelling techno-economic proposition that we do have, and that is why we can compete with the existing mature technologies like lithium-ion or pumped hydro. And then ultimately we also are very scalable. Because our technology is made up of the existing components, that means that our supply chain is resilient, it's extremely scalable, and it could be localized, which is quite important in the current macroeconomic environment where we're looking at the kind of localized content. So that gives us a competitive advantage over lithium-ion that, as we know, is predominantly manufactured in China. Whereas we can source our components in Europe, in the US, in Far East, and build our systems with the local supply chain.
And so what's the size of your typical projects right now in terms of power capacity?
That's a good question. So, as I mentioned, this is a grid scale system. So we've designed a 20 megawatt, 200 megawatt hour battery system. It's a modular approach that we've taken. So if you want more capacity, you just build more CO2 batteries. This way we can quickly reach bankability, which is very important when it comes to scaling deep tech and hardware businesses. So we only sell our CO2 batteries in 3 colors, which are black, black, and black. And that will help us scale the technology.
Okay, maybe from an investor point of view, how do you react when you see these alternatives of traditional batteries? Do you want to go through it? Do you want to forget about batteries and go full for these things? What's your perspective on it?
It's perhaps a boring answer, but I would go back to my answer before, which is all we care about is a pathway to superior unit economics. So I think it's very important in venture to avoid prejudice. I think it's very important in venture to avoid whatever the herd is hyping up, not necessarily avoid, but look at it with a clear eye. And for us, that clear eye is the core data, in this case, financial data. So if there is a non-electrochemical battery solution that can deploy at meaningful scale at unit economics that are superior with where we expect LFP to be in 5-10 years, then we'd be very excited to look at it. I think that's quite a challenging ask, particularly in the 10 hours and below space with LFP today at price points that we hear of like $50 a kilowatt hour, mental, and a potential floor of like $35 a kilowatt hour. There's a handful of technologies that have pitched us with price points below that. But on the one hand, you have the entire manufacturing weight of China pushing from 50 to 35. And on the other, you have a startup that's probably currently at like 800, trying to get down to 30. When you kind of look at that balance of risk, you might hold back before you invest people's pensions into the latter. But we do our best to always stay fresh and always look at the numbers and go into every deal without the prejudice.
Sure, yeah. Well, that's one of the message today is that storage is made of a big mix components of different solutions. So, Marcin, we see this big project based on batteries. When you approach grid operators or customers, what's the reaction when you discuss, you provide something new and different? What's the answer that you get from the market? Is it do you have a lot of green lights or a lot of challenges and roadblocks that you're facing right now?
That's a very good question. We actually have a very good feedback from our customers. The customers are looking for alternatives to lithium-ion. There is inherent risk in lithium-ion related to higher tariffs and others. But also, we're seeing that the market is moving more towards 8 to 10 hour solutions and energy storage. And 8 hour for lithium-ion is not as competitive. So we internally don't see lithium-ion as competitors. We do believe that lithium-ion has a place in the storage, grid utility storage, which is 2 to 6 hours. And then there should be some alternatives that for 8 to 10 hour durations. And because we use the technology that utilities know very well, the due diligence process with them is relatively straightforward. And also we have customer proof points showing that they're moving away from lithium-ion for longer durations. So in Arizona, the major utility announced a tender for 8 to 10 hour non-inverter based solutions, which effectively excludes lithium-ion. And the reason for that is that there is a concept of physical inertia into the grid that helps synchronizing the grid, which you cannot achieve with lithium-ion batteries. So that's why looking for different alternatives is something that the customers are looking for. And because we use those components that they're familiar with, it's much easier to convince them to deploy this novel technology.
All right, thank you. So we have 5 minutes left. I'm going to go to the questions. We have a lot this time compared to the other. Did you want to add something? No? Okay. So I'll try to give some questions for all of you. Maybe you have first like some question about the different battery tech. It's true that there is a type of batteries we didn't really talk about today is the redox flow batteries. And I have a question about the comparison of maybe sodium growing versus vanadium redox or other type of redox batteries. How do you think these compare?
I would love to take the flow battery question, if that's
Sure.
just because it's a hot topic. I've been looking at a couple of redox flow batteries recently and have had my eye on the space for a long time. And I would say that's actually the example that I was thinking of when I was talking about it becoming increasingly challenging to get bet against LFP, where general analysis based on the cost of materials looks at a floor price of about $35 a kilowatt hour. And I have no doubt that certain flow battery chemistries and designs could get below that. And therefore, I think there's opportunities there to explore. But you need one hell of a team to progress from basically prototype technology to give you confidence that they're going to get to the $30 per kilowatt hour. They're aiming for a tiny, tiny, tiny goal with no margin for error. And so I think to summarize, I think it's a really exciting space. I also know some of the top flow battery companies that I've seen over the last 3 years. I know at least one has actually withdrawn from the market and given up based on the consistent progress down the cost curve of LFP. But I think there is an opportunity there. I think we need more really talented people to dive into that space, support the companies building in that space, and we might unlock something that's cheaper with many more cycles and no degradation.
I'll just add redox flow is a major effort in ESRA. It's a short name for the Research Alliance. But we focus on non-metal redox flow. So many of you probably don't realize many good organic molecules that come in from the petrochemical industry. You have to have them anyway because a lot of our chemical products are based on those molecules. They actually have the ability to make redox flow batteries. And it is our mission in the next few years to move those new molecule technologies to the level where the VCs and the startups will be interested. I think it's very important regarding that cost number because using organic molecules as the medium for the redox flow can potentially really make breakthroughs in the low-cost redox flow batteries.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for these two perspectives. I'm getting a lot of questions about Northvolt. It's in a lot of people's minds. I don't want to really try to ask why they failed. It's more maybe, do we have any key learning about these big factories we're trying to build, these gigafactories? Maybe what is the key learning of this year of what happened in the deep tech space? Anyway.
Yeah, I can take that. And
then Martin, yeah.
Martin, do you want to take it? So what happened at Northvolt is a huge shame, not only because it was a very exciting company, but for the fact it kind of knocks the confidence a little bit that Europe can do this stuff. I think the challenges they faced are not unique to companies that raised at a similar time to them. They raised a huge amount of capital, the most of any private company ever in Europe. I think some of the things they would probably do differently, from what I know, they tried to build many factories at the same time without having perfected one. And battery manufacturing is extraordinarily complicated with a lot of, I mean, it's extraordinary to think of it, but a lot of trial and error on the production line during the first couple of years and huge levels of wastage, which is why metrology and sensing on the manufacturing line is such an exciting space from a venture investment perspective, an innovation perspective, to reduce the ramp-up time for gigafactories so companies like Northvolt can more effectively compete with established Chinese players. And the second piece that I've heard but I don't know enough about is that they have quoted a dependence on certain Chinese machinery that didn't work as expected. And the reliability of that was challenging. They thought it was good enough for China, therefore it's good enough for us. But that equation didn't work out as expected. So those are some of the deep, like the kind of a bit of a debrief on Northvolt. I don't think it should put us off building gigascale factory infrastructure in the future. I think we should take the learnings from there, but focus on capital efficiency, focus on perfecting something before expanding it dramatically. Those would be some of my key takeaways.
Thank you. Maybe Martin, from the
Yeah,
scale-up point of view?
I completely agree. Scaling hardware businesses is very complex and very expensive. So in Europe, in the US, it's all about capital efficiency. We need to deploy capital efficiently, whereas it's very hard to compete with, for example, China, where they're a bit more patient and have a lot of support from the government, so they can run unprofitably for an extended period of time until they actually reach the unit economics that are compelling. Whereas in Europe, it's very difficult to raise capital, so that's why focusing on capital efficiency is key in the hardware business.
Okay, thank you very much. So I see we have just 2 minutes left. Maybe it's time to wrap up with a last sharing. So if you had each one of you one key message for the audience, for the deep tech ecosystem about this space, very clearly, rapidly, what is the call to action that you would like to address to our crowd? Maybe starting Matthew, Shirley, and Martin.
I think it's one I spend a lot of my time sharing in our community, which is be positive and be aggressive. I think, as I mentioned, we've gone from 9 gigawatt hours deployed in 2019 globally to over 200 in 2024 in 5 years. The 2020 number was only like 13 gigawatts, so it's actually even less than that. There's phenomenal momentum in this space. There's a phenomenal amount of capital in this space. Yes, we need to move quicker and further, but I think one of the things I don't like in the space is there's so much negativity thrown around that it breeds apathy out of despair, and I think that's really dangerous. There's a lot to be very positive about in what we've achieved over the last 10 years. Let's stay positive, let's stay aggressive, let's stay ambitious, and push the boat even further and faster. At the moment, we're exceeding almost every International Energy Agency projection ever in terms of solar deployment, in terms of battery deployment. I think it's very easy to get negative looking at mainstream media headlines. I would encourage everyone to fight that, focus on the numbers, and kick on in whatever part of the ecosystem you're working on.
Well, lithium is a positive ion. It always attracts negative opinions. So I was there since 2000 at the beginning of BYD, CATL, Tesla. I want to remind all the people in the audience, it took humanity more than 150 years to scale lead acid to terawatt hour. It takes us less than 30 years to scale lithium-ion batteries to terawatt hour. And it is really a teamwork globally. Our Asian partners, American scientists, European scientists and researchers, we all made the contributions to make the world a better place. This is hello tomorrow. I want to say, at least for myself, next 20 years, I will dedicate my lifetime for scale to 20 terawatt hour capacity per year. And we are racing against the CO2. So, for me, I think we have no time to be pessimistic and to be depressed. So I hope, my take-home message for everyone is get together for some actions.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Maybe a last call to action from Marcin on your side.
I think we should remember that energy storage is not only about sustainability, but also national security and economic growth. And we do need a lot of technologies and innovation in the space to reach ambitious goals. And I think that investors and the customers should be bold in making decisions in adopting new technologies and deploying them and making sure that the market adoption is as fast as we need it.
All right, thank you very much. Thank you for your attention and your questions. Couldn't address all of them, but there is a lot. So please enjoy, connect with us after. And I wish you a great end of day. Thank you very much. Let's go.